Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2014 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. Thanks for joining us. We have gotten together everyone in the chat room. We're all live. We're going to answer pop quiz questions interactively. You'll see what everybody else is asking and answering. You'll be able to see everything here on the study group. Just something that we do every week. We take your questions and we try to put all of those questions into something that can help us learn more about the CompTIA A+ certification. There is quite a bit that is going on. The reason that we're here, of course, is because of this absolutely free A+ course that I have out on the internet. I make all the videos. I put them all out there for free. It costs you nothing to be able to take the entire course, something that you would spend a lot of money to be able to do from another third party, I guess. There's that some people like to take this with them. I'll talk more about that. You can take this course offline and listen to the MP3s or watch the videos on your mobile device as well. This is a live call-in show. We're going to do really interactive non-call-in for the first hour, but then I open the phones up and we can talk back and forth over the telephone. I've even got an 800 number, so you can call via Skype anywhere in the world for absolutely free. There is also a lot that's going on. I think in the last week, I may have posted 50 or 60 or 70 videos out on YouTube. I'm posting all of the new Security Plus content. So I've been very busy on YouTube, and you can see what's going on there at professormesser.com/YouTube. I try to put a few things here and there in my Twitter. Last weekend, I was struggling with a few network issues. So if you go back in my Twitter, you'll be able to see those. And my daily pop quiz is out on Twitter. You can find it at professormesser.com/Twitter. And there is the vouchers that we have. Before you take your test, don't spend and pay full price for vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Costs you nothing. I've got a discount code there. You can save 10% off any CompTIA CompTIA certification you might take. So it really doesn't matter which one you are taking. Maybe you're not taking A+, maybe you're taking Network Plus, maybe you're taking any of the CompTIA items, the CompTIA certification courses and exams. You can find more details at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you're following us live on YouTube, we also have a chat that you can join. There's one chat on my site. There used to be multiple chats on my site. There's one chat you can go to now, the certification chat that I am watching go by on my screen. It's at the bottom of every page of my website. So if you are watching live, you can follow along and ask me questions in the chat. So that's another place where we can interact and do some interesting things. If you already have your A+ certification, I also have the certification continuing education units that you can get. Those continuing education units, you can learn more about that at the URL on CompTIA's website, or just search for CompTIA Continuing Education Renewal. And you can get 1 CEU for every hour spent in this particular session. So that might be worthwhile to go through and see what's there. It's a lot that we're able to provide. And if we can keep your certification up to date, we can do that well. I will give you a secret code during the study group at some point that you can email to me, and I'll just send you an email certification that says, yes, indeed, you must have listened to this because you got the word right. If you also can send me a list of all the questions, I can do that as well. It's much easier with the code word. This is a course that I mentioned is available for absolutely free, but if you want to take them with you, I do have a course version that you can download. So you can buy this course at professormesser.com/downloadable-A+. I've got the videos there. I've got audio files. My slides are there. There's also full transcripts. All of my videos have closed captioning in them, so you can follow along if English maybe isn't your first language, or you're trying to figure out when he says scuzzy, what is he talking about? You can see the words go by on the screen, so that might help. So just something to keep in mind for those of you that have purchased. Thank you so much. It keeps all of these things going, keeps the entire thing moving in the forward direction, which is something we love to say. There is also a lot that we do today. So another thing that we do on the study group now is we have kind of a pop quiz that we like to do. So the first half of the study group, and I like you to follow along and answer the questions as well. You can go to Socrative.com. The room name is Professor Messer. You click the little link there at the top that has the student login. You don't have to have a username or password or anything. It will ask for your name. You don't have to use your real name if you don't want to. You can then join the room and you'll be able to see questions pop up. So I have on my screen, let's start a quiz so I can give you an idea of what this might look like. And I'm going to start the quiz now. So you will see if you are logged into Socrative right now. I'm gonna go to this screen and show you what I see. This will be useful. Here we go. Enter your name. I am Professor Messer. Let's click done. And now you can see the questions that I am asking you right here on the screen. How long have you been studying for your A+ certification? Less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, more than 9 months, or I already have my A+ certification. You can also download the Socrative app. So if that's something that you would like to put on your iOS device, on your Android device, on your Windows Phone device, there's apps for all of those so that maybe you can watch this on one screen and answer on your phone on the other. Now on my screen, I am also seeing the answers pop up, but I get to see them in real time as things are going. So I can see, let's flip back over. Here's what you're answering. So this is one of those things where once you get in and work with Socrative, you're in now, you can answer the questions, and I can see interactively what those answers are that you're putting up. So in this particular case, I can see everyone's logging in. There's about a 30 to 45 second delay on this as you're watching it. So now everybody's getting in there. 18 people have answered. So 44% have said less than 3 months. 21%, 25%, 3 to 6 months. And that's usually what we'll see. Sometime in the first 6 months, people are studying. There's kind of a drop off for a bit. And then for more than 9 months or a year, there's another one. And then many of you already have your A+ certification, maybe here just to see if you can remember all of the things from your A+ certification and play along with the rest of us, because I try to put questions in here and mix them up from different sections of the A+ exam so that you'll be able to see that. So again, you can always go to Professor Messer's page, or Professor Messer's room, the room name Professor Messer, I guess, with no S, at Socrative.com to play along with that. And remember, of course, that nothing in the chat room. Don't answer these pop questions in the chat room. That's not what we're shooting for. We want to be able to have you follow along, but not to spoil it from anyone else. Before we get into our first question of the day, I'll remind you that the A+ exam is 2 separate exams. It's currently the 801 and the 802. Got a lot of questions this week. People asking me, hey, is the A+ exam going to change anytime soon? I heard that it's going to change next month, very shortly, before the end of the year. I heard, and then of course I asked, where'd you hear that from? I don't know, Facebook or something. I don't know, it was somewhere. So in fact, I finally found the Facebook post on the internet where somebody said, hey, this thing's changing before the end of the year. And CompTIA responded to it and said, no, it isn't. You're at best case, you're talking summer or fall of 2015 before we ever get a new one out. And of course, there is a time frame where both are available for a certain amount of time. So I could say here in September, you probably got a year at least before you even have to worry about a new version coming out. So for everyone worried about the rumor control with that one, there is nothing to that particular rumor to be able to do that. So do not worry about the exam going away. It's going to stay the 801 and the 802 for a while. The 801 has really the hardware piece. People think of this as the hardware exam, but it also has some networking on it. Also has printers on it. Printers. I have a printer question for you today, of course. The 802 exam, more operating systems, a lot more operating systems, primarily the Windows operating systems. Does not have Windows 8 yet. So at least the last time I downloaded this week, and I keep going back and downloading because CompTIA could change the exam objectives at any time. You should always download the objectives to check what it is. Haven't seen anything with Windows 8. I have a feeling they're going to wait for the update, but what do I know? They could do whatever they want. I have no affiliation with CompTIA. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't hear about what they're doing in their meetings. I just go by what you tell me. Sometimes you're finding new updates to the exam objectives before I find them. So thanks for sending them. If you see something new, feel free to send it to me. Not going to bother me at all to go that. We're going to go through all of those different 801 and 802 questions today. Another thing that might be useful is I've taken all the course notes from all of my videos and I've collapsed them into PDF files. A lot of you want to see all the slides or have all the slides available. I just took everything from all the slides and shrunk them down into one single, or really in this case, two separate PDFs, one for the 801 exam, one for the 802 exam, and I make them available for sale so that not only are you getting something that's going to help you for the exam, but it also helps keep the site going. Our hosting costs well above $1,000 a month just to keep the website going. Is that crazy? So this really does go a long, long way. Every single bit of this goes back to keeping the site going. You can find all of the notes there for everything. I've got test tips in it. I've got everything there. You can go through this as a final sanity check. It's not really designed to replace a book, but it's a fantastic use of taking all of the notes instead of you writing down every single thing and writing down every single chart and finding all of the pictures from all of my videos. I just put them in here. So all of those are in these PDFs. You can learn more about them at professormesser.com/A+SG. Well, let's do some questions. So I've got a question for you now. Now, no answering in the chat room. This is the part where we find out if we are really, really, really going to know our stuff for the A+ exam. The first question I have for you is, what kind of topology is most often found with modern Ethernet networks? And it would be useful if I flip over and go to the next question. Let's go to next, and you will see on your screen, it will indeed pop up and say, what kind of topology is most often found with modern Ethernet networks? Is it a bus topology, a star topology, a ring topology, or a mesh topology? These topology types are important to know for your Network Plus exam. But of course, I like to have two steps, at least two steps, with the questions that I ask you. And again, no answering in the chat room. I like to have, you have to know what all of these things are and then apply them back to how today's Ethernet networks work. That's one of those things that can become useful. Those different options that are available to you, you can find at Socrative.com. Go to your student login, put any name in you'd like. The room name is Professor Messer. That will take you to this particular exam, or this particular question. So what kind of topology is most often found with modern Ethernet networks? Is it a bus, a star, a ring, or a mesh? It's got to be one of those, right? It's got to be one of those that we've listed there. So you do have to know, what is a bus topology? What is the star topology? What is the ring topology? What is the mesh? And we've got a lot of people that have answered this so far. So let's see how we're doing so far. One of the things that I like with these questions is I try to mix it up a little bit and give you some different options. In this particular case, there's only one answer that is really the most correct answer here. With your app or with the online, you could answer multiple answers, but in this case, it's only one that we're looking for, the best choice for these types of topologies. So let's see how we did. Isn't this great? We get to see immediately how we're doing. 11% of you said the bus topology, of course. 60%, probably you could say a large majority of you said the star topology. The ring topology, again, 11% said that one. 18% of you said that's kind of a mesh. I've seen these network diagrams that my network administrators have. That's got to be a mesh topology, isn't it? Because that's just a mess. I've seen this. And it looks sort of like this. It's just everything's going everywhere. There's multiple links to multiple sites. You generally see this with wide area networks, and indeed you could have. Oh, we've got something going on. Oh, the nice lady is telling me that my stream is not set up right, so we're gonna hang up on the phone line there. We'll come back to the phones in just a bit. The thing about the topology types, though, is that you can find different kinds of topologies in almost anybody's network. You could probably find a ring topology if you looked hard enough. You could certainly find a mesh topology in an Ethernet backbone if you looked around hard enough. But we're really talking about the basic Ethernet network. What is the fundamental Ethernet network topology type that you would happen to find? So not really mesh. So if you answered mesh, I'm sorry, it was not that one either. So how about the other one? How about ring? Well, as you can guess, ring topologies still used a lot with wide area networks. When you go from location to location to location, there's quite a bit of redundancy that's built in, and not redundancy, but certainly fault tolerance built in with that. Because if you break a ring, most of these rings that we set up in these types of topologies will heal the ends, and make the ring simply go all the way around the other direction again. Kind of an interesting design that we've put into those, so that if we do have a break, we simply seal the break on both ends of this and loop around it. It's kind of a neat idea in how we do it. And with wide area network, that comes in really handy because you've got people who are working out in the streets. They're digging up roads. They're fixing bridges. And it's very easy for them to break one of these fiber links that we have on a wide area network. And so at the other ends of that, the devices recognize, oh, somebody has now broken the link that goes over the bridge. Let's loop it back and keep the ring up and running. You obviously won't be able to go anywhere between those two. If there was anything between there on the bridge, you'd be in trouble. Everything else is looped back. Kind of nice to have that. Not all ring topologies will do that. The old token ring topology, which you really don't see any longer out there. And if somebody's asking you to study token ring, this came up in the chat room the other day, that someone's taking a class that expects them to know something about token ring. That is badly outdated. You just don't see token ring anymore. Interesting topology in itself, but it's one that did not have that loop back technology in it for the fault tolerance. If you broke a token ring connection, you broke the token ring. It was a bit of an issue. So ring topology, not really Ethernet either. Ethernet does not work in that ring scenario. A lot of you said bus, and if you go way back in Ethernet, you've seen on the A+ exam, it shows you some coax cables. We don't talk about Ethernet over coax on the A+ or Network Plus any longer. But we certainly used to, because we used to run Ethernet networks over coax. That was the only way to do it. The other way that we do today does not use coax, so it's not a bus type network, but very common to be able to do this. Bus networks are really quite a pain because it's a single wire. You can think of a single wire going in the middle of the room with multiple connections on it where people connect in, and it really was prone to being disconnected. And if you got a break anywhere along the line, your bus network effectively broke. You definitely had a problem with that. When we troubleshoot problems, we would often intentionally break it and seal the ends. We would terminate the ends in the middle and see which side was working, and we'd simply cut it in half every time to try to find where is the problem that we are running into, who has plugged something in that's not working right. Not a real optimal way to troubleshoot, especially if the bus winds its way through a building and you'd have to run between floors and between plates. That's crazy. So definitely not a modern Ethernet network. When we talk modern Ethernet networks, we're really talking about a star network. Most large networks have everybody connecting back to a central device, a concentrator, a hub, and in most cases today, an Ethernet switch. That is exactly what we are connecting to. It's one of these things where it's so much easier to manage because everybody's going back to one or series of switches. Everybody directly connects in, and then the switches connect to each other. So there's this star where everybody's coming in from the outside and connecting into that central device. And this picture I have here really looks very common. You'd have a server and a workstations and printers and everybody else connecting to a concentration point. In the case of modern Ethernet networks, it is an Ethernet switch. And there were a number of other types of networks throughout the years that have used this star topology with this device in the middle to be able to do that. That's one of the very common ways. So for those of you that did answer the star topology, and you could see 61%, you would have gotten that question absolutely correct. Okay, no answering the chat room. Let's go to our second question. There's more here. There's a lot of questions here. And the question is, what does the D in DIM refer to? Let's go to our next question. I have to hit the button. There we go. What was the D in DIM refer to? And I've got a few options for you. If you go to Socrative.com and go to the Professor Messer room name, you'll be able to see that the options available is this memory chips are installed on both sides of a DIM? Our DIMs must be installed in pairs. That's what the D is for. Does the D mean that the electrical contacts on the DIM are different on each side, or does it mean that the DIMs are twice the size of SIMs? So again, I try to mix these up and give you multiple steps you have to think through to be able to get to this. So you now have to think, what did that D stand for? And once I know what the D stands for, how am I supposed to now interpret that in a way that fits one of these particular things? Again, don't answer in the chat room, but it's got to be one of those, right? Memory is something we work with all the time in our computers. Me and my sons just built a couple of computers. I had them build computers themselves over the weekend or over the summer. And I had them, they bought the case, they spec'd out the motherboard, they spec'd out the memory. And we spent a lot of time talking about memory because memory in a motherboard has to be exactly right. So we spent a lot of time on PCPartPicker.com. We spent a lot of time looking at the different statistics and specifications for the memory. How fast is this memory? How much latency does this memory have? And of course, most of the ones that we were putting into our computer were DIMMs. But that DIMM stands for something. That package of a DIMM, that D on that package stands for something that we've got there. So one of the ways that we look at memory is we have to know what these different abbreviations mean when we are working with them. So I love questions like this because especially, and the reason I put this question in is this came up in the chat room over the last couple of weeks, and someone was insisting that it was that D stand for something. And this is where, when we start looking at memory, we get into a bit of a challenge with language. So 36% of you said the memory chips are installed on both sides of a DIMM. 17% DIMMs must be installed in pairs. 37% said electrical contacts are different on each side. And 8% said they're twice the size of SIMs. We don't even know. It's got to be one of these, right? No clear winner with this one. So we need to break this down a little bit and see what the differences are. Let's first talk about sort of the precursor to a DIMM. We don't really see these used much any longer, but they are the precursor of where DIMMs came from was the SIM. This is one of the very first packages that was so easy to install in a computer because you've got all the chips on one module. You just slide the module in. We used to put individual chips on the motherboard. You have to get these tiny little chips with the tiny little pins, get them just right on the motherboard, and you would have to put all of them on, and you get them in packs of 8 or 9, and you'd have to put them on, and then there would be separate rows. So you might have this bag of memory chips, and you'd be spending all day trying not to bend the little legs on the memory chips that you were putting in. These SIMs were great. All of this was on one stick. We're so spoiled these days. You kids, you're so spoiled. Just put a stick in there and you're done. It has all of the pins right there. The interesting thing about this is that the electrical contacts, the contact that you see here at the bottom, the silver part, is exactly the same contact on the front and the back. It's almost like you were taking the contact and it's the same electrical contact on both sides. It folds over. So when you plug it in, if there's all of these, if it's a 30 pin or 72 pin, this is a 30 pin DIMM, all 30 of those pins exactly the same on both sides of this. Doesn't mean you can install it in either direction. It means when you put it in, there's really only one set of contacts that you're plugging in because it's on the same on the front and the back. They're not all standardized, or were not all standardized at the time. It's when we finally came out with DIMMs where we got a lot of standardization. And the DIMM stands for dual inline memory module. The dual part, the D, means that the electrical contacts are different on both sides. Has nothing to do with where the memory chips themselves are installed on the physical device. Has nothing to do with pairs of them. That's a different memory idea, to have separate pairs or put in different pairs. You can have some mini computers only have one single dual inline memory module installed on them. It has nothing to do with size either. Although the SIMs and the DIMMs are a little bit bigger than the SIMs. It was really only a little bit, and that's not what the D stood for. It was really with the idea of having that dual connections on both sides. So if you look at all the connections on one side and you flipped it over, it would be a completely separate set of connections. Now this allowed you to move a lot more back and forth over the same physical area. And this is really the same package that's used for DDR, DDR2, DDR3, DDR4. You've got now lots of memory types, and they all use this DIMM moniker to describe how we're plugging these things in. So if we go back and look at the results of this, for those of you that said number C, letter C, the electrical contacts on a DIMM are different on each side. That's what the D is for. You would be absolutely correct. Now, one of the things I love about these questions, by the way, those of you that answered the memory chips on both sides, installed in pairs and twice the size, now you know. You now got that knowledge you can take with you. So when you go into the exam, you understand exactly why that DIMM is different than the SIM. Very, very useful. to be able to get there. And I mentioned in the chat room, since we're talking about this, might be worthwhile to have a quick little departure, since someone else brought this up. The website that my sons and I use to build our computer is PCPartPicker.com. What a great site, because you can simply go and build your computer out and gives you all the things you need in your computer. I know that's hard to read there. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Let's choose a CPU, because that often is a great place to start. And you've got all these AMD CPUs, Intel CPUs. You can filter them out. Maybe I just want to see Intel. And maybe I just want to see a certain type of Intel. Maybe the i7 is the only one I'm interested in. All right, well, now I've got some newer, and if I choose, let's just click and say, yeah, that's the one I want, the 4770. That's a good one there. In fact, I'll just click on the name and it can give me specs about the 4770, and then it tells me where I can buy it and who has it for the cheapest, which is how PC Part Picker keeps all of this going, is they get affiliate money for doing that. But I want to add that to my part list, and now I've got that processor. Now when I choose a motherboard, it's going to give me the motherboard options that are appropriate for the type of CPU that I chose. And if I go outside of that list, which I can, it will warn me that, wait a second, you chose a CPU and you chose a motherboard. Those aren't going to work very well together. So you can sort this by price. You can sort it by maximum amount of memory. You could spend days in here. I'm scared that I've even gone this far with it, just so one of those things can get there. Let's quickly go back to questions. But PCPartPicker.com. Very, very nice to have that there. So another question I have for you, again, don't answer in the chat room. Which of these external hard drive interfaces provide the fastest throughput? Well, that's a very good question. It would be useful if I could give you the option. There we go. Which one of these external hard drive interfaces provide the fastest throughput? And the options that I have for you, if I can flip over there, USB 2.0, that's certainly an external hard drive interface. eSATA, another external hard drive interface. That's different than SATA, of course. You've got FireWire 400. Wonder how fast that goes. We've got micro USB. So we've got these 4 interface types here. So now we need to figure out which one, if we were going to plug in an external device, an external hard drive, and I've got these interfaces available on this computer, which one should I choose to get the fastest throughput? It's a very common question. So again, a couple steps to go through this. You have to know what each one of these interfaces are, and then you have to know the speeds and the feeds, as they say. This is an important section of the A+ certification. It's one where a lot of people get very frustrated because there's all these standards. Each one of them has a different set of cable links that you can use. Each one has a different set of throughputs that's associated with it. There is a lot to remember on the A+ certification, and certainly that's one of the things that people run into. Again, to answer this, you go to Socrative.com. The room name, Professor Messer, all one word, and that will get you there into the room. And you can answer the question, which one do you think has the fastest throughput? Wonder which one it will be. Well, in this particular case, we've got a nice smattering of answers coming in. 5% of you said USB 2.0. 72% said eSATA. Wow, there's a lot of people said eSATA. Are you sure? Are you sure about that one? I'll let you. You've still got time to change your answer. Just saying. There's 23% of you said FireWire 400. 0% said micro USB. I threw that one in there and nobody really bit on that one. Now, for those of you that were thinking, which one is it? Well, let's step through all of these. We've got some options. I chose USB 2.0, the USB 2.0 standard, 480 megabits per second. And it's one of those things that we were glad to get USB 3.0. But remember my question, I told you USB 2.0. USB 2.0 runs at 480 megabits per second. Well, okay, so we know that. I also said FireWire 400. FireWire 400, let's flip through my slides here. This mode for our FireWire 400 runs at 400 megabit half duplex. Well, already we know that the USB 2.0 and the FireWire 400, we got those two speeds there. So let's flip over to eSATA. eSATA, we have some also versions there, SATA version 1, 2, and 3. eSATA tends to be based on the version 2.0, the revision 2.0 for eSATA. So we're talking 3 gigabits per second. And again, I told you that I threw in the that other option there of the micro USB, which is an interface type, not a standard. It's really a style of connector. So the 0% of you were absolutely right not to choose the 0%. You can go home proud on that one. eSATA, clearly the fastest one. So if you do have an eSATA connection, that's going to run faster than your USB 2.0 and faster than your FireWire 400. Good job at picking those. There's more questions here. We've got plenty more to go through. This one, kind of a troubleshooting question. This one actually came up in the chat room this week where somebody was having this problem, and I thought this would be a good question for the study group. And the question is, we go next. After upgrading your motherboard, you notice that the reset button in your case is not working. Which of these options would be the most likely cause of this particular issue? So you've got a few options available. That means that you've upgraded the motherboard. Now the reset button isn't working. Is it because the new motherboard doesn't support the reset function? Is it because you need to upgrade the BIOS of a new motherboard to get that to work? Is it the reset button has a cable problem? Or do you need to install new motherboard drivers? So now we have to go, this is an 802 question. We have to think about troubleshooting. We have to think about what possible things could be causing a motherboard reset button problem. This is one of those where you have 4 options here and you have to pick the best option. I was reading on Reddit this week. Somebody was really complaining about the fact that CompTIA asked you for the best option. There could be multiple options on here that are correct, and I have to choose the best one. But this is a really good example of what you might get on the test. One of these is very clearly the best option. Others here are very clearly not the best option. It's not, there's not a lot of gray area here. If you know your stuff, one of these answers will jump right out at you, and it will be very obvious what this particular issue is. A lot of these really break down and go through understanding more about how to troubleshoot and what options are there. That's why we often say it's good to get a lot of hands-on work. If you want to answer this question, you can go out to Socrative.com, to the Professor Messer, blah, blah, blah. I keep saying that over and over, but indeed, that's exactly where you should be going. So how do we do? Well, I'll tell you how we did. 2% of you said the new motherboard does not support the reset function. Okay, that's pretty ridiculous. Most or all motherboards have the reset function built into the motherboard. Of course they do. The new motherboards we just bought actually has a reset button on the motherboard even. So it's very nice to have that there. If you're building something and you don't have the buttons hooked up yet, which I've already kind of given the answer there. That's what that's about. You need to upgrade the BIOS of the new motherboard. It might be nice to have the latest BIOS, but that's not what is causing the reset problem. Again, the best answer is what we are talking about. We do not need to install new motherboard drivers, which is really what that should say, or drives, or any of that, both of them. That's certainly not your issue. 74% of you were absolutely correct that the reset button has a cable problem. So that is where we should really be looking at what we're doing. When you start installing and putting together motherboards, you've got this case for the motherboard, and the case has all of these wires that go from all of the ports that are on the case. So if you look out on the outside of your computer right now, you've probably got some USB interfaces. There's probably some audio connectors on the outside of your case. You probably have a reset button on the outside of your desktop case, probably not on a laptop, but you've got all these buttons. Well, those all have to get back to the motherboard somehow from the case. I'm buying the case from one person. I'm buying the motherboard from someone completely different. So they all have these bunches of wires that come out. And at the end of the wires, you will see things like this that say reset switch or hard disk drive LED or power LED. That's how all the lights and all the buttons get from the motherboard back to the case itself, because on the motherboard will be all these little pins. They look like jumpers, and indeed they have the same style of a jumper, but they might be for power. Your motherboard itself may even say on it power. Here's reset. Here's LEDs, and you can't really read the other side of that describes what those LEDs might be. So you plug the wires into the appropriate connectors, the appropriate pins on the motherboard, and that way you're able to get all of that information back to the case. So if your reset button is not working, it is most likely because the issue you have is that it has a cable problem. So you may want to check to see, where did I plug in the reset? Did it come off when I was moving things around and installing other drives? And I can follow back that reset button and plug that in. Now, of course, it may not be one of those. It may just be a problem with getting some of the reset button may be broken. The motherboard may be faulty. But again, we're choosing from these 4 choices, and you have to choose the best one given the choices available to you. There may be just ridiculous things on your exam. It couldn't possibly be that particular thing. Well, that's good. They throw that in there, try to get you thinking about what you should be thinking about when you're troubleshooting. Get your mind into that troubleshooting mode to be able to do that. I've got other questions for you. We're moving right along now. What is the best way to dispose of old laptop batteries? It's a pretty good question. This comes up all the time. I just was going through some old laptops that I have, and I have the batteries that go with them, but the batteries will no longer charge. They're old batteries, and they're not really that great to be able to work with. So you do have some options for these. One is you can wrap the batteries in paper and place them in the trash can. You can follow the directions from the MSDS. You could the company that sells the new batteries is legally required to accept the old batteries in return, or is the option ship the old batteries back to the original manufacturer. And one of these is the correct answer with this. The other 3 are absolutely not the correct answer. Maybe this is one of the cases where we go through and try to get rid of what we know is wrong so that we can really find the right thing. And you do want to be careful when dealing with batteries, because there is a very particular way to manage batteries. They have chemicals inside of them, and those chemicals, of course, are not something that works very nicely with the rest of our world. So we want to be sure that when we dispose of batteries of any kind, even AA batteries or 9-volt batteries around your house, or lantern batteries, you want to be sure to dispose of them in the right way. Almost said the answer there. I stopped myself. So go to Socrative.com to Professor Messer, and you can answer that one. In this particular case, you guys are pretty well versed on how to handle batteries, because this is following the directions from the MSDS is really the best way to take care of this. You do not put them in paper and put them in the trash can. The company that sells you the new batteries is not legally required to accept the old batteries in return. And the old batteries, I guess you could ship them back to the original manufacturer, but that's not the best way to deal with them. Gets them out of your building. I think they'll ship them back to you if you try to do that. One of those things to be able to make that happen. The MSDS is an important thing. So you need to know about the MSDS. This is the Material Safety Data Sheet. Here's an example of one from Dell, how to dispose or how to work with the standard capacity toner cartridge. So there's a copy of that one. Has a bunch of information in the MSDS. What's in that particular material, any hazard information. If that battery gets on you, if the case breaks and that battery gets onto you, what do you do if the battery asset? So first aid measures, firefighting, accidental release and leaking, handling and storage, and much more. There's plenty of things to see in that. So if you answered that particular answer there, you were absolutely correct. Follow the directions from the MSDS. So already in the chat, people are bringing up the inevitable question of dealing with the performance-based questions in the exam. And one of the best ways to work with performance-based questions is to have some familiarity with hands-on working with the operating system, doing things at a command line, being able to work through an actual operating system. But of course, one of the challenges when dealing with operating systems, especially on the A+ exam, is there's a lot of operating systems on the A+ exam. You have to know Windows XP. You have to be familiar with Windows Vista. You have to know Windows 7. And you have to know how to work with them regardless of the type of environment that you're in. You have to know where the different options are. What are the differences between those operating systems? How you work with them. And a great way to get some hands-on in an operating system and use a real OS and do things in a real lab environment without having to set everything else up yourself in your office, in your studio, in your bedroom in your house is to use something like Freestyle. My friends at GTS Learning have put together a fantastic package that includes not just the labs, it includes their entire book online, and it includes sample tests for you to take as well. This Freestyle, and what I'll show you with the Freestyle today, really focuses on the lab part, since that's what we were talking about in the chat room. And instead of you having all of this equipment everywhere and trying to work with it yourself, you can have it all sitting right here on your screen. Here's the GTS Learning Freestyle right now. I'm going to go to user account management, and the entire lab is off here to the right side, and I can change the sizes of this. I can download it as a PDF. They've even gotten the lab screenshots to follow through, and here's all my computers. And I can power on these devices. I'm going to switch things over to HTML5 so I don't have to load any software on my computer. I just bring up my browser, and now I'm in the lab. I just booted up all three of these devices: a domain controller, a Windows 7 device, and an XP device. I didn't have to install any operating systems. I didn't have to load anything. I just opened up a web page, and I clicked on Start the Machine, and somewhere in the world, in the cloud, there's a machine that is booting up right now. And this makes it so that any time of the day I can pop in here, and if I want to go to Windows 7, it's now booted up, and I can click on my Windows 7 device, and there I am. I'm in Windows 7. And it's a remote desktop. I didn't have to load up any software at all, and now I'm in this remote desktop device, and I can move around and look at network information. I can go through as if I had Windows 7 sitting in front of me, because effectively I do have Windows 7 sitting in front of me. The folks at GTS Learning have not only made these available, they made them available at a great price. So if you go out and go to professormesser.com/freestyle labs, you can get this $99 for a year, all the labs you need for the 802, for those of you worried about that command line piece. And also their book is included with that. Also, the tests are included with that, the sample tests that they've got set up on there. You get full access to this for an hour for absolutely free. So you can try it out yourself and see if it's something that you might want to try. Go to professormesser.com/freestyle labs to learn more about that. And we want to thank GTS Learning for helping us and sponsoring what we're doing with our study group. Well, we've got a lot more to go through. Before we go to our next question, I want to also remind you that you can get CEUs, continuing education units, to be able to work with this as well. Those continuing education units, I ask you to send me an email, and in that email, I ask you for a special code, a special keyword. And the keyword this month is Freestyle. Since we're on that page, I just looked over and that's what it was. Freestyle. Go to Freestyle. Send me at the top of the Professor Messer website is a link for Contact Us. You can send me an email, and in that email, just put the word Freestyle. I know what you mean. And then I'll send you back a little certification that tells you all about that. In the meantime, let's ask some more questions. I've got plenty more. There's tons to do. I'm 42 minutes in. I'm like halfway through my content. We got a lot more to go through. This happens every time, doesn't it? I don't know why I'm so surprised. How could I possibly be doing that? How could I possibly be behind? Well, I'm behind every single time. So the question is, let's go to the next one. You're performing a fresh installation of Windows 7 on an older Windows XP Professional desktop PC, but the Windows installation CD-ROM, that DVD, won't boot, and it just boots Windows XP normally. What is the most likely cause of this particular problem? Well, that was a mouthful, wasn't it? But we now need to think about troubleshooting, especially with these operating systems and installing operating systems. Your options available are the Windows XP Service Pack 3 security features won't allow booting of a DVD-ROM, or is the option the Windows 7 DVD-ROM is too new to be read by a DVD-ROM inside of that old Windows XP computer? Is a Windows 7 not supporting the computer's DVD-ROM drive, or is the computer's BIOS misconfigured? One of these, again, your most accurate answer, the best answer to choose from this. And if you go to Socrative.com into the Professor Messer room, you'll be able to see more about or be able to answer the question that we have here. There's a lot of you that are already answering. Again, if we go through this, the XP Service Pack 3, the security pack, security features won't allow booting of DVD-ROMs. The DVD-ROM is too new to be read by the drive inside of the computer. Windows 7 does not support the computer's DVD-ROM drive. Or is the problem here the case that we've got a BIOS that's misconfigured? So one of these is the best answer. I love the best answer, don't you? It's one of those. So let's see how we're doing with this. If we now pop over and have a look, in this particular case, this is one where I really wasn't fooling very many people. 5% of you said it's too new to be read by the DVD-ROM inside the computer. Not the case. DVD-ROMs are relatively standard. I'm now hosting a live feed where I'm simply repeating myself. It's standard that one of the nice things about having these standards, they work regardless of what particular device you have. So a DVD-ROM and a Windows XP machine should be read fine by a DVD-ROM that's got Windows 7 on it or any other kind of DVD-ROM. As long as it's designed for that purpose, you should be fine. The real issue here, and we really didn't fool people, is the BIOS itself. If you look at your BIOS, there's a boot option in the BIOS that determines what do we boot from first. And if removable devices, hard drive, CD-ROM, or network boot, this is the order that's in my BIOS. Now, obviously, if this is my config, let's zoom up on this. You can see the first options go to a removable device. The second option is the hard drive. The third would be a CD-ROM drive. So it's going to boot from the hard drive before it even tries to get to the CD-ROM. That's really the answer we were looking for there, is that, yes, indeed, it is that BIOS misconfiguration for those pieces that have those there. That's really what we're worried about. So good on y'all, the 87%. You did fantastic with that particular question. Did not fool anyone to be able to do that. Well, since we're talking about operating systems, I have another operating system question for you as well. This one dealing with upgrades. This is something you have to know about for dealing with upgrades. And the question here is that you're upgrading a user from Windows XP x86 directly to Windows 7 x64. Which of these would be the best way to move the user's profile from one operating system to the other? And you've got a number of options available to you. You could do a Windows in-place upgrade. You can perform this with USMT, whatever that is. You can perform a Windows backup and restore. I think I know what that one is. Or a Windows Upgrade Advisor. So one of these is going to allow you to move the user's profile from one operating system to the other. Which would be the best way to do this? One of these is the best way. And it should be able to work on finding which ones it could not possibly be, and at least narrowing down what your options are for something like this. Go to Socrative.com to the Professor Messer page, and I can tell you that upgrading operating systems tends to be a bit of a bane for us. In fact, many of us are working on this one, and the questions we've got, I'm going to let a few other people answer. You folks are holding back on this one. You're wondering, which one is it? Not a lot of people answering this one so far, so I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. There are a number of things. Now, when you're looking at this question, there are a number of things to look at. We're upgrading from Windows XP x86 to Windows 7 x64, so you need to understand what are my upgrade paths. That might help you answer this particular question. And the other part of it is you're moving a user's profile from one operating system to the other based on the upgrade paths. Which one is going to allow me to move the user's profile information? So this is nice because when you move from one operating system to the other, it would be nice if your background stayed the same. If the operating system settings that you set in your original OS followed you to the new operating system, that would be very useful. And if we look at what people answered, we are all over the place. A Windows in-place upgrade, 22%, 32% said USMT, 25% said Windows backup and restore, and we had 22% said the Windows Upgrade Advisor. We just don't know, do we? So one of these, to be able to work with it, is definitely something that will help all of us once we figure this out. Well, the key in this one is we're going from Windows XP, in fact here, Windows XP x86, a 32-bit version of Windows XP, we're moving to a 64-bit version of Windows. So in-place upgrades aren't even supported from XP to Windows 7 regardless of the version. You can't upgrade in place from Windows XP to Windows 7. Isn't that crazy? You have to first, if you want to do in-place upgrade, you got to first go to Vista, then you've got to go to Windows 7. So in-place upgrade, not an option for this particular question. The other option here, USMT, we need to talk about that one in a moment. Windows backup and restore. We're backing up and restoring. We're backing up the entire contents of a drive, and then we're restoring them But remember, when we go to a new operating system, it's a completely different format. We can't simply restore over a new operating system. That won't work. And a Windows Upgrade Advisor will simply tell us if it's okay to upgrade to Windows 7 based on the hardware and software that's running in our computer. It does not actually do any of the upgrade process. What we want is the USMT, the User State Migration Tool. Again, I'm using abbreviations to help get you comfortable with using that, because when we talk about USMT, we really are talking about abbreviations. And this allows you to migrate from one Windows version to another. This is currently the version that you might find, Windows XP to Windows 7. That's exactly what we want to do. And it's a migration. It's going to take all of your user information, and it's going to take a lot of the profile information. It will not take your applications, but it will take your user content and profiles, collects them all together, and then makes them in a format that will work properly in the new operating system. It's also a very automated way. You can see it's command line based. So it's a very simple and automated way someone can log in, and we can grab all of their user information in an automated form. USMT is the correct answer for this one. Then that's why it's one of those challenges to be able to work with that. The User State Migration Tool, a great tool to be able to use. So those of you in the chat room got that one absolutely right if you chose USMT. Well done with that one. Again, no answering in the chat room. I have another question for you. No answering in the chat room. Remember when I told you that I had a printer question for you? Well, here it is. When you print your spreadsheet to the company's network printer, the paper is always fed from the first tray of the printer. So which of these would be the best way to change your output to print from a different printer tray? There's so much text on this particular page, I had to get rid of my head on the screen just so I could read it to you. There's printer problems are a challenge. You've got a number of options available to you with this one. If I can go to the right page here. So if we wanted to change our output to print from a different printer tray, would we download a copy of the printer control panel software utility from the manufacturer's website, I guess the printer manufacturer's website? Would we modify the default settings on the front of the printer? Would we change the printer tray option from the printer driver? Or would we ask the manufacturer of our spreadsheet software to modify the printing process to use the secondary tray? One of these would be the best choice to use to be able to do this. So no answering in the chat room, but you can absolutely go through and see if that's something that you can do here. This is printer questions. You will probably get a number of printer questions. There's a whole section of the exam dealing with printer questions. And so this is one that can be very, very useful to be able to know, because you're probably going to get a few. And most of them are not only how does this printer work, but like this one, how do you troubleshoot a problem if you were to run into it with these printers? Again, go to Socrative.com to the Professor Messer room, and you'll be able to do this. And if we go out there and answer this question, let's see how we're doing so far. 5% said download a copy of the printer control panel software utility from the printer manufacturer's website. 24% said modify the default settings on the front of the printer. 72% said change the printer tray option from the printer driver. And 0% said to talk to the spreadsheet company. Yeah, go to Microsoft and tell them, I want to print to that other one. Can you guys get on that? Nobody bit. Okay, 1%. 2% of you said, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's ask Microsoft to change things, because I apparently am not capable of doing this on my side. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it, if we had to go back to the manufacturer of the software every time we wanted to change how it printed? That's the very, very old days of computers. We don't have to worry about that any longer. These days, all of these things that we control in our printer are done in the printer driver. The printer drivers themselves are very specific to the operating system we're using. So when we download a printer driver, it has to be the printer driver for Windows 7 if we're using Windows 7, or Windows XP. I can't take a Windows XP printer driver and install it onto Windows 7 and expect it to work properly. These drivers tend to be specifically written for the operating system. This is even more important for 64-bit versions of operating systems. These drivers allow us to change the language of the printer. They allow us to change other options in the printer. They allow us to change what tray we're going to print from. So if you're one of the folks that did say, yeah, I think that we could change the printer option from the printer driver, you were absolutely correct with that, because you've got all of these different settings to choose from. You can see here I've got, do I choose the upper paper tray, the manual paper tray? Do I change some of these printers? This one has 5 trays and a manual feed and an envelope feeder. So you have to choose which tray you want to pull from. And in a large organization, you might have letterhead is in tray 1, white paper in tray 2. You might have colored paper in tray 3. So you have to choose the correct tray when you print to be able to do that. Pretty useful to have that there and be able to work with it. Well, I have another question for you, but wait, we've got more. One of your customers has dropped off their laptop at your repair desk, which is nice of you because I do fix laptops. A message taped to the laptop says, doesn't work. Which one of these would be the best next step? Again, it's one of those CompTIA questions that is asking you for the best next step. And your options are, do we start the laptop and look for any issues? Do we call the customer and ask for more information about the problem? Do we use our computer diagnostics boot CD to run a full set of hardware tests? Or do we replace the power adapter and try booting the laptop? So you've got a number of things you can try. Many of these look pretty right on to me. This is one of those times where the questions and the answers, it could be any one of these answers. But again, we're looking for the best next step. This is one of those that I think is important to consider when we're talking about troubleshooting. So we really have to look at the entire problem, look at all of the possible answers available to us to see what those options might be. Again, no answering in the chat room, but we can see that in this case, if we go to Socrative.com, you can get at least in the Professor Messer room, you can answer this yourself and tell me what you think the answer should be. We've got a number of you that have answered this one already. And in this case, you folks were right on the money. 93% of you said, call the customer and ask for more information about the problem. That's exactly what you should do. Very often in technology, we tend to try to solve technology problems by using technology. And in reality, a lot of these technology problems are solved by talking to another human being. As crazy as that sounds, talking to human beings, I didn't think we'd have to do that to work in IT. But in fact, that's exactly what you should be doing. The better communication skills you have with other people, the easier your job is going to be, because you're going to hear exactly what they meant when they said, doesn't work. Well, what doesn't work? Does the mouse not work? Does the screen not work? Does it not boot at all? And instead of me trying to figure it out, why don't I give them a call? Hey, it's James from the help desk. You dropped off their laptop. It says it doesn't work. Can you give me an idea about what you're seeing? Is there a message that pops up? You're trying to print something, it doesn't work. Who knows? They might say, well, whenever I try to plug in a USB key, it doesn't work. Well, that's completely different than what I thought of when I thought doesn't work. Being able to do that. Really? Because that's really the challenge. So we wouldn't start the laptop first. We wouldn't run a diagnostics. We wouldn't start replacing things. We'd call them, say, hey, what do you think? It doesn't work? What do you mean? Tell me more information. What are you seeing? Why is this not working for you? And stepping through that piece. The CompTIA exam goes very deep into talking to customers and asking them questions. This should be a conversation. Tell me what you're seeing. In fact, you may be worried that they're going to be frustrated. It's not working. I'm sick and tired of this, and I hate you, and I'm going to kick my dog, and I hate everything. Well, okay, well, I can make your life much better. I am the guy who's going to make your day. So tell me what you're seeing. Turn them around. You can tell people, I could fix all of this for you. I am a computer genius. I will make your machine work perfectly. And just reassure people. Frustrations aside, I can make your world much better. Tell me what's going on. We can make that happen. Very, very useful to be able to do that. So ask the questions and keep an open mind with people. They're very frustrated when those things are happening. People hate it when those problems are occurring to them. You want to walk them through and make them aware that you understand exactly what's going on there. We can fix this for you. All right, another question. We're doing it now. We're coming up the top of the hour. I told you I'd try to squeeze all of these questions in here today. One of my users has finally decided, let's see here. One of my users has finally decided to move from Windows XP to Windows 7 and has asked you to back up some important spreadsheets that are stored in the user's documents folder of their Windows XP machine. Something very specific. Where can I find this folder? On a Windows, they're moving from Windows XP to Windows 7. Again, another migration. So those of you that maybe didn't do so well in that migration one, here's your chance for redemption. And they need you to back up important spreadsheets. There's nothing more important than a spreadsheet, is there? They are stored in the user's documents folder of their Windows XP machine. Where the heck is that folder on Windows XP? And again, this is one of the cases where we're going to be moving important files. We need to know exactly where they are. And of course, you'll ask them, oh, you have a backup, right? No, I don't have a backup of anything. Why would I back up these spreadsheets that I've spent years of my life putting data into? And I know, so don't erase them. So it's pretty important that you know exactly where those happen to be. You need to go out to that person's computer and find this out. Okay, maybe redemption was the wrong word because, again, well, no, you guys are doing pretty well. So if we look at where these things are, 7% of you said /users, 13% said /documents and folders, 41%, in fact, it's a tie game right now, documents and settings in my documents. And this is where the stumbling blocks occur when dealing with these different versions of operating systems. And I think it's a really good thing that CompTIA still requires that we understand Windows XP, because this is a very common thing that's going to be happening now more and more as people are finally migrating off of Windows XP and getting into Windows 7. This is where we want to be able to move things over. There's going to be a migration period. There's still millions of devices out there running Windows XP. You better know the ins and outs of that operating system to be able to do it. Well, if we look at Windows XP, we look at the XP Explorer, we can look at the C drive and see under the C drive is a section for documents and settings. If you want to find all the documents and effectively all of the profile information for these users, it's going to be in your C drive under documents and settings. So for those of you that chose documents and settings, you would be absolutely correct with all of those. Now, those of you that did say my documents, notice I put a backslash in front of all of these. We are referring to a path on the drive. My documents is a library that is on the drive. That is not where the files are located. So I guess I can give you half credit for that one. But if you really want to find the file directory where everything is located, is backslash documents and settings. So for those of you that want to complain that, yes, that was a trick question. Well, I guess it was sort of a trick question. The questions you get on your CompTIA exam will have no tricks to them. There won't be, if you miss one of these characters, it's not going to be that kind of question. But I wanted you to really discern between those two. So when that comes up, you'll know that my documents is different, the documents and settings, and we're just having fun. We're not even worrying about what goes where and getting us a grade at the end of this. We just like going through questions and having them pop up. I mentioned earlier in the study group that you should always download the objectives. I say this in every study group. I'm quite certain that you're tired of me saying this in every single study group, but I'm going to do it anyway because people keep coming into the chat room and saying, hey, I'm taking my exam tomorrow. What do you think I should study? And then our first question is, well, have you downloaded the objectives? Because they make a great final checklist. And they say, downloaded the why? I don't know what that is. I don't know what objectives are. This is a wealth of information. This tells you exactly what you need to study to pass your exam. We're always wondering, do I need to know this for the exam? Anything that's in this sheet of paper and these sets of pages is exactly what you need to know for the exam. So very, very, very useful to have that information there. Make sure you go to this. And if I've got a shortcut even on my page, if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, it will take you to the objectives page. Just one quick step, or just go to the Google and type into the Google CompTIA exam objectives. Takes you right to the page. And you'll be able to find exactly the objectives that you're looking for and know exactly what those are. Very, very useful to have those there too. You need to have those objectives. Well, we're coming to the end of our study group, but I want to know for next time the things that you might want to cover. So I've got now, it's kind of a fill in the blanks for you to be able to give me feedback, and I get to see on my screen all of the things that are important for you. So if you're studying for your A+, or you want some questions, maybe you really, really, really like those migration questions. Maybe you hated them. This is a great place to tell me that the questions were good and the questions were not good. So that's where I like to go there too, and be able to have that information available to me. I think that's my best feedback, because I go to this list and look through all of this. I go to the questions you send me throughout the month. I look at what people are saying in the chat room and being able to do all of those at the same time. So go to the Socrative.com site, go to the Professor Messer room, and I will be able to see all of the things that you're typing in there. And I'm looking at, some folks said memory. They want more printer and memory questions, configurations and group policy settings, something don't go into a lot with A+, but there still is a section of that. Motherboards, RAM, CPU, more printers, operating systems, gluttons for punishment. I'll do more printer. I was thinking of actually doing maybe a theme for the week. So maybe I'll pick a topic and do a theme. I kind of like jumping around though. Kind of like having different things. I try to cover both exams equally, or at least to some degree, so that we can step through those pieces and have that there. For those of you that are kind of watching this every week or every month, we do this all the time. If you'd like to keep up with what we do when we're not doing the study group, I send my A+ pop quiz of the day out, and you can find it on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. If you want to help support the site, go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Really, really, really useful to have people subscribing to the YouTube page. It's difficult to explain, but these are one of the things that Google likes to see, and in return, they help with the site promotion and being able to have those videos out on YouTube. So it's nice that they recognize that you recognize that it is something that you like. If you want to see more about those quick reference guides and those study guides, you can see them at the professormesser.com/A+SG. Again, that $99 GTS Learning deal is still there. The special code to get that, and you don't get that code, you don't get that savings unless you go through this link at professormesser.com/freestyle labs. And of course, if you want to see what we're doing every month with these study groups, you can follow us at professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll be able to see whenever I do that as well. Well, that is a lot of information in a very short period of time. We've gone through a ton of details. And if you have ever any interest in doing this, we're going to do it again next month. So feel free to join us then. In the meantime, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group.